Fantasy football family, once again, it's another episode of Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast. It's your boy Eugene. Again, I'm one of the hosts of the show. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us for another episode. You can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Genes. That's GNES. You can also find our official Twitter page at Off the Line FF. We just talking all things fantasy over here. Analyzing players and their situations. Have a few laughs. Hopefully you can understand what we're talking about in a simplified language and apply it to your squads. Hopefully it's not too late to apply to it because now we're in the playoffs. Some of us can rejoice while others are swimming in sorrow.
Sulking away.
Yeah. But to the other host of the show, Ike, what's going on? What's popping?
What's good? I can be found on Twitter at just_Ike09. And yeah, like Gene said, hopefully you guys had a pretty successful year and made the playoffs. This is kind of what you've been working the last 14 weeks for to get to this moment. No more bye weeks, and more importantly, no more excuses. This is where your players perform, or you win or you go home. I mean that's the name of the game at this point. At the end of the day, like it's been a long season. It's been a lot of injuries. A lot of injuries, a lot of players you drafted high didn't really pan out the way you wanted to, like Christian McCaffrey, and that was probably like the biggest one for a lot of teams that kind of sunk a lot of teams. From
Saquon, depending on where you drafted him.
But he's back in the last. He'll have the last four games or last 3 games here to hopefully make a run. But speaking of injuries, we did have a lot of injuries this past Sunday and this past weekend, week 14. Lamar Jackson hurt his foot like early in the first quarter, or I think his ankle hurt early in the first quarter. John Harbaugh did come out and say that it's not a high ankle sprain, and he is hopeful that he can play this weekend against Green Bay. They host Green Bay, so just a lot of things to kind of keep an eye on for his practice participation and things like that. Kareem Hunt, he left early in the game as well, in that same game. So I think he's week to week. So I think he's not gonna play next week. So there's a couple of waiver wire targets to look for later on when we touch on that. Austin Eckler, he also hurt his ankle. I think third quarter.
Yeah, it was third. I believe it was third quarter.
But the coach did say that he's going to come. He could have came back in the game, but since they were up so much and they were beating the hell out of the Giants, you probably want to rest him, especially with Kansas City coming into town this Thursday night. But there's a little bit of concern there. He did not practice yesterday, and I'm not sure if he practiced today. I haven't seen anything showing that he practiced or participated. So another thing to keep an eye on: Austin Eckler. Terry McLaurin had an injury as well. He had a concussion. So I think he's in the concussion protocol right now. And it was just a really, really bad play that he got hurt on. Taylor Heineke had him open on a deep ball and underthrew him pretty badly.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to try to make a huge, contested catch, and he hit his head on the turf, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens if he can clear the protocol against in time to play against the Eagles this weekend. And then finally, Josh Allen, he has a foot sprain. He's day to day, according to head coach Sean McDermott. So we'll see if I think they said a lot of preliminary reports say that he should be fine, but we'll see how his practice participation goes. But yeah, it was just a bunch of it was a very chaotic week. 14. We had injuries, and we also had some bad quarterback play as well. Cam Newton got benched again.
Twice.
The Panthers got benched twice in the same game. Benched twice for PJ Walker, and PJ Walker promptly came in and threw a horrific interception.
Anything you can do, I can do better.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, he came in and threw a horrific interception, and the Matt Rule said that he's floundering right now. He actually said after the game that he plans on using both quarterbacks I don't know how that's
bro.
going to work. If you're trying to use two quarterbacks, it means you don't have one. And that's
And
the
then
bottom line.
and then even after that, he said Sam Darnold is still like in the mix.
Yeah, Sam Darnold. They said Sam Darnold's going to factor in down the
Yeah.
stretch, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. But the funny thing about this game was, when Cam was in the game, DJ Moore was getting his targets,
Yep.
getting his work. Got 10
And then
targets, 6 catches, 84 yards. And then when PJ Walker came in the game, Robbie Anderson came alive. He had
it
7
was
for
weird.
84 and a touchdown.
Yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
like a literally two games in one for both of those receivers. And Robbie Anderson hadn't heard from him all season, hadn't had a 20-point game all season, and finally, in week 14, when probably he's on the waiver wire and nobody's starting him, he has a 20-point game. So that's that was a pretty interesting call here. Did you see any other bad quarterbacks just
Shoot,
outside of the?
our home team, man. Dak, I don't know what's going on with him. Ever since he's came back from this calf injury, he's been struggling. Even that game on Sunday, he was still struggling. It was just a matter of like defense scoring touchdowns, getting timely. Like he looked good, couple possessions here and there, and then you go in another one and it's just like, man, what's going on? Second half was really, really bad. You saw that egregious pick that he threw for that pick six that kept Washington in the game somehow.
Man.
We're just glad that we just made it out with a win. But I mean, Dak has not looked good. Hurt me in one of my leagues because I needed production from him and I didn't get it, which caused me a playoff spot. But hopefully, these last 3 weeks, hopefully people that have Dak, the schedule is still nice for him to do some damage. It's just a matter of do you trust them? So
yeah, and just one quick note about that pick six. It's kind of funny. I was watching it live, and it was one of those aerial views that you play on Madden. You know that same view that whenever you're playing on Madden, and you see how the play unfolds and things like that, and you just literally saw the bootleg, and then you saw the linebacker trailing behind the defender or underneath the defender. And I'm like, okay, there's no way Dak is going to throw this ball, right? He's not going to throw this ball. He throws it. He literally, like, I was completely flabbergasted. I was watching the game at home, and my nieces were jumping on me as I was watching him throw that pick six. And I'm just like, what the hell are you doing?
Like, I don't know how he didn't see the white jersey that was like standing right there, like running the freaking route.
Yeah, so the thing is, number one, he threw it too late, way too late. So as soon as he bootlegged out,
it should have been thrown.
The ball should have been out of his hand. But then there was a defender coming at him, so maybe he didn't see him. But even then, you still should not throw that pass. It was a bad throw, it was a bad decision, and yeah, I don't have any more words. It was just a bad showing from Dak. I think that's the worst he's looked over the last 5 weeks. He's been up and down. Obviously down against Kansas City. Obviously, down against the Broncos. He was so against the Raiders. I think he played a lot better than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And then he was, he did some good things against the Saints. Still was kind of up and down in that game as well. But overall, we kind of want to see more from Dak going forward. And I think with the Giants and the Washington football team coming up, I think these are two get right spots. We should see that offense, especially that the passing game and the receivers get right. But before they face the Cardinals in Week 17 for basically all the marbles, fantasy championships. That game should have a lot of points. But that's kind of looking ahead for right now.
Yeah. Another quarterback that didn't look good at all was Josh Allen. Specifically in the first half, he just looked bad. Like he didn't have no time. He looked pressed. I'm not sure it just seemed like people weren't open. But in the second half, we want to get to the good quarterback play. He looked good in the second half. Like they actually started running the ball, even though it was him doing the running majority of the second half. But that was something they didn't do in the first half, which helped the Buccaneers just kind of tee off on them in the first. So he looked good leading the comeback in the second half.
Yeah, I think the first play of the second half was a run to Devin Singletary for 30 yards. So that kind of, I
Yeah,
think, set the tone a little bit for that second half and how they kind of got back into that game
yeah.
late. It was a phenomenal game to
Yeah,
watch.
the second half was really good, and that was one thing. Just watching these games for fantasy purposes, like a lot of these games weren't really good to watch. It was almost like you're just better off just like red zoning it
Mhm.
or focusing on a specific game because just as a collective, it wasn't a good week to watch for sure because there were
Mm.
so many blowouts in the first half. Um, but like we said, Josh Allen had a good second half. Start talking about some good quarterbacks, good quarterback play. You saw Russ with his get right spot versus the Texans. He threw 9 passes. He was able to complete 9 passes with over 20 yards. I mean, that's a lot. The only person that had more than that this past week was Stafford with 11. Uh, that, like we said before, this was one of them games where he should have got right. He did, for sure.
Yeah.
Another quarterback that looked good was Brady once again, and that's that game with Josh Allen, 363, 2 touchdowns. This dude even rushed 7 times for 16 yards.
You just did you
uh,
see Bruce Arians quote after the game? Like somebody asked him about like Brady rushing for first downs, and Bruce Arians' response was, "Yeah, that's enough of that shit."
yeah, I know.
He was like, "Nope, I'm not. I'm done. I've seen enough. Let's
Yeah,
not have a 45-year-old quarterback running for first downs because
yeah,
one
yeah.
one one wrong hit and he's done."
Yeah. I
So
mean, it looked like the engine, like it looked like when he was running, like he had to put coal in his an engine of the old trains, putting
yeah,
some coal to try to get some some horsepower.
yep,
That 13-yard first down that he ran for, it looked like he was like he had like three monkeys on his back trying to get to the first down.
yeah.
Um, Also in that game, he also per Fantasy Pros they stated that he had 0 poor passes in that game. So I mean the Bills just they couldn't really do anything versus their passing game. So
Yeah, and I
um,
think that might be a little bit of a product of Tre'Davious White being out for the
yeah,
season. That's kind of left them a little more vulnerable than we're accustomed to seeing. So I think that's just something to kind of keep an eye on moving forward for the rest of the season for that team.
yeah,
Switching gears though to the to one more particular quarterback that's been playing well, playing lights out. Aaron Rodgers of the Packers, continuing to show us that he owns the Bears with another stellar performance, 341
man,
yards and 4 touchdowns. That makes 7 total touchdowns on the season against the Bears, 6 passing, 1 rushing. He's owned them all his life. Like he said, continues to own them. Not only owns the Bears, but he also owns the NFC North. His last 10 games, so basically dating back to the beginning of last year, 2020, he has 34 touchdowns and no interceptions against the NFC North, his division. Like he just completely owns that division. He every time he plays against them, he just torches them. And you can't really say too much about the play of Aaron Rodgers. At home against the division, it's pretty much automatic. 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns here, and he's going to throw multiple touchdowns to Devontae Adams, who he threw another couple of touchdowns to him as well. He had 10 catches, 121 yards, another 2 touchdowns, and his last touchdown in the fourth quarter, he ran like a ridiculous fade. Like he sold the fade and then he ran a
mm-hmm.
slant to put
Slant,
Jalen Johnson on skates. Jalen Johnson actually played okay in that game, and that one highlight that he got done dirty. Now he's looking silly. That's going to be replaying all
yep.
season long. So Devontae Adams, he just continues to show that he's the best receiver in the league, the best route runner in the league. The way that his feet and it's the chemistry he has with Aaron Rodgers is just second to none. And on that same note on chemistry, in another game, we did touch on this guy earlier, but Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett, it seems to me like they're starting to gain their traction since Russell Wilson's been back from that finger injury. Tyler Lockett had 5 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown. He did catch a deep 55-yard touchdown right before the half. Just vintage Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett. It was like one of those, they call it moon balls, where it just he throws so deep it basically touches the sky and then just softly lands in Tyler Lockett's hands for a touchdown. Lockett had a 32% target share, most yards on the week. He was first in air yards with 137, and on the season he is fifth in air yards with just over 100 on the year. And with this performance, is 5 for 142. He is now over 1,000 yards, and he's eighth in the NFL in receiving yards. And also, since Russ has come back, since week 9, he is the wide receiver 9 in PPR.
Crazy,
So,
man. The virgin poet.
yeah. And then while DK Metcalf is on the other side doing nothing.
Nothing, but organizing four sons.
Or oh gosh. let's not. This is a clean podcast, sir. Let's not go there.
Oh man.
But really quick, just in that same division though, we did have another guy just completely go off for the 49ers, George Kittle, the people's tight end. Another stellar performance. Back-to-back games where he's suplexing the opponents. Against the Bengals, he had 13 catches, 151 yards, and another touchdown. This is actually so get this. This is actually his fourth game of 150 yards and a touchdown, and that's the most in NFL history from a tight end. Like, just think about that for a second. Like, all the tight ends, all the great tight ends that have played in this league, the Shannon Sharp, the Tony Gonzalez, the Antonio Gates, Gronk, all these guys. This is George Kittle's fourth career game of 150 yards, and he's the only tight end in NFL history to do that, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns in back-to-back games. So last week he had 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. So the last 2 games he has 22 catches for 332 yards and 3 touchdowns. And second consecutive game of over 40% target share. 40% target share. That's just absurd. That's absurd. And he missed, I think, 3 games with a calf injury, 3 or 4 games with a calf injury, and he's still 244 yards shy of 1,000, and we still have 4 games left to play. So there's no doubt in my mind that he's gonna go over 1,000 yards, and it'll just be remarkable given how he was hurt early in the season and people were kind of calling him washed and injury prone, but he's here to remind us, he's when healthy, he's the best tight end in the league, because his ceiling is that of an elite wide receiver, because he has a ceiling that these other tight ends in the league don't have, right? I mean, he has multiple 200-yard games as a tight end, so he can be a league winner with his remaining schedule. This week he has the Falcons, and then week 16 he has Tennessee, and then week 17 for the fantasy championships he has Houston. So
must be nice
to have any kind of 49ers on your roster with that kind of cake schedule. You're in the driver's seat, to see a lot of fantasy points.
Yeah. A couple more wide receivers. First one, again, Hunter Renfrow, his third straight game over 100 yards, 5 out of the last 6 without Henry Ruggs in the lineup. He's finished wide receiver 1, and then in averaging at least 9 targets per game. He's wide receiver 3 since week 9. If you can even fathom somebody like Hunter Renfrow's built being your wide receiver 3 since week 9, averaging almost 19 points per game, is crazy. Just even without Waller, just nobody can cover him in the slot. He just gets open, man.
Yeah, he's a pretty damn good route runner, and I don't think he has a lot of touchdowns over that span either. He's just racking up yards and catches, and getting open, man, at will.
Yeah. Even in that KC blowout, he was still out there doing work. So, and then last of the wide receivers, the duo in Cincinnati, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase finally found his way back into the end zone. With 6 receptions for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns, joins only 4 wide receivers in NFL history to now have 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns as a rookie, which is just crazy.
Yep.
He's pretty much on his way to break just was broken by Justin Jefferson's wide receiver rookie record. He definitely should beat that before the year ends.
Yep.
And then also you got T. Higgins still turning up with his 5 for 114. I know we had that debate last week about which one is the wide receiver. T. Higgins being the wide receiver one now. I mean, at this point, they both can be wide receiver ones based off the target shares they've been seeing within the last few weeks for sure. So at least high end wide receiver two, low end with wide receiver one upside. So
Yeah.
these are two wide receivers that I mean, they can help you along the way to possibly get to a fantasy championship.
Yeah, and this is T. Higgins' third straight game over 100 yards. So he's been coming along strong. And the thing is Chase and Higgins, they don't seem to be cannibalizing each other. They can both
Yeah.
eat equally in that Cincinnati passing game because it's a condensed passing attack,
Yeah.
right? It's just Chase, it's Higgins, and then maybe Mixon underneath. And they'll maybe throw a couple of passes. Tyler Boyd, he may get some run here and there, but it's pretty clear that he's the odd man out, unfortunately. But Chase and Higgins, those are the two guys that the Cincinnati passing attack is going to go through on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just transitioning to we had good quarterbacks, we had good wide receivers, we also had a lot of good running back play as well. Starting with a surprise to actually make this segment, but Rashad Penny from the Seahawks. We hadn't really seen much from him
Ever.
throughout his career ever in the NFL. But he had 16 carries, 137 yards, and 2 touchdowns against the Texans. He had a 64% rush share. So he'll be a hot waiver wire pickup this week if you didn't pick him up last week. But Pete Carroll does believe in him, and they're still going to give him chances. That first round draft capital that's why he's still on the roster. If he was drafted in the second, third, maybe fourth round with all his injuries, he probably would not be on that roster. But since he's a first round pick, and they'll they still have him for cheap, they'll still allow him to get opportunities and get chances. And hopefully, going down the stretch, Rashad Penny could be a guy that you can potentially plug in your lineups and get some running back 3, maybe high end running back 2 production. So we'll see how that goes. Another running back that performed well again, Leonard Fournette. Another 19 carries, 113 yards, and another touchdown. Completely controls that Tampa Bay backfield. 86% rush share, and he had another 4 catches and 19 yards on a 15% target share. He is one of the steals of the draft this past summer. He was drafted as maybe an 8th round, 9th round pick,
Mm-hmm.
and he's giving you RB1 production on a weekly basis. Ronald Jones was also getting drafted in that range, and he's giving you nothing, absolutely nothing. And so, Leonard Fournette just continuing to show that, he's one of the biggest steals of the draft. And another steal of the draft, we saw him play last night, was James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. Had another 2 touchdown runs. And I think he's closing in on 20 touchdowns this year, isn't he? I think last we checked, he had like 15 or 16. But he's been another revelation.
He's at 14 right now. Well, 16 with the 2 receiving touchdowns, 14 rushing, 2 receiving.
So 16 touchdowns this year, which is insane. 9 catches, 94 yards. He was their leading. He had the most catches on the team last night. And there was this one catch where he ran like an arrow route, shook the linebacker and caught it with one hand. Kyler put it on him and caught it, one hand catch. He has a couple of those one-handed catches on the season.
So I heard a stat on the telecast. He has the most one-handed catches on the season with 5.
Oh, you know what? I heard that too. I think he has like 5 or something like that.
Yeah, it's 5, which is pretty crazy to hear for a running back. So
yeah, especially James Conner, who you don't really see too much. You don't really think of as a guy that can just really catch the ball like that. But maybe, hey, he needs to be used like that more, and he's continuing to show us that he's another steal that that was going pretty late in drafts in August. I think he was like a 12th round pick, 11th or 12th round pick. And since Chase Edmonds has been out since week 9, he has 4 RB1 finishes over the last 5 weeks. He's now the RB6 overall in fantasy, and he has Detroit coming up next. He has Indy and Dallas left. Those are pretty decent defenses against the run, but we'll see if the volume is going to continue to be there, even with Chase Edmonds coming back. So that just kind of remains to be seen. And he does have it. He did get banged up towards the end of the game, so that's another thing we'll have to keep an eye on to see
Yep.
if he's going to continue to if he's going to practice, or if it's serious, or if it's going to linger. But and then one more running back we can touch on really quick. We did see the return of Alvin Kamara for the Saints. So we saw his career. He had a career high in carries. He had 27 carries, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Caught another 4 passes for 25 yards, 82% rush share and 24% target share. So this was pretty much the Alvin Kamara that we've known to come and known to love, that we've been known to love. So 97 yards after contact, which was first this week in week 14. So Alvin Kamara's back. They played the Jets, and what is our motto on this show? Fade the Jets at all costs until they show us. Until they show you that they can defend and cover anybody. So Alvin Kamara back just in time for the fantasy playoffs.
Very true. Which leads us to our fantasy MVP of the week, which is another running back. And this guy showed out to start off week 14 on Thursday night. Dalvin Cook, even when everybody thought he was down and out, thought it was going to be impossible for him to play. Mike Zimmer said, no, not so fast, my friend. I need this win. So he ran him out there, and he ran 27 times for 205 and 2 touchdowns, 1 yard shy of his career high. A lesson learned for fantasy managers is start him when he is active, because they're not going to be shy with the touches for him. You barely saw Madison out there, so just to let you know that how much confidence they have in whoever the running back, whoever's supposed to start that week, that's the person that's going to get majority of touches.
Yep.
In that particular game, he had 11 carries to go at least 10 yards, which was first from this past week. But every time he touched the ball during that game, it looked like it was going for 20, 30 yards. Like it just I don't know what. I don't know. I don't know if they just didn't refuse to watch film or what. It was just odd to see how much gaping holes you saw in that game. You would have thought they had like 3 Justin Jeffersons out there for why they didn't have enough people in the box to double.
Yeah, he had lane after lane after lane to run through. Like literally every time he got a carry, he was just running free. He was even surprised that he had so much space to run with. Like there was multiple. I think he got tackled multiple times by Minkah Fitzpatrick, and if he did not get tackled by that safety, he would have those would have been house calls. So he could have been looking at like 300 yards rushing if he broke a lot of those runs. Getting shoestring tackled. So Dalvin Cook. Again, lesson learned for you guys. If I think there was a stat that came out before the game where the last time Dalvin Cook dislocated his shoulder, it was and he came back to play 2 weeks later against the Saints in the playoff game. He had like 30 touches for like 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that was like 2 weeks after dislocating his shoulder in 2019, I believe. So just Dalvin Cook knows how to play through shoulder injuries. I guess he has a vibranium shoulder. So he knows how to play through shoulder injuries, and we should have trusted him to. Now, obviously, we're not going to say we knew he was going to come out and run for 200 yards. We're not saying that at all, but we know that Dalvin Cook at any given moment he can have blow up games because he's that talented and he's that dude. When you give him a full workload, but unfortunately, we do have to kind of transition and pivot away from most valuable player to least valuable player of the week. And this will go to quarterback in Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence. He's been pretty bad all season long, but he was especially bad this week. He had 224 yards passing and 4 picks. He's thrown no touchdowns in 5 out of his last 6 games. That Jacksonville team is just pathetic in so many different ways. That coaching staff is clueless. They don't know how to use James Robinson. He had 6 carries for 4 yards. We could probably put him on this in the segment as well, but a lot of that is not his fault. It's just the fact that the coaches are just absolutely clueless over there. They have nothing. They don't know what they're doing. Urban Meyer doesn't know what he's doing. Tennessee was actually a plus matchup for Jacksonville. We were, he may have been on the streaming radar this week. They're the eighth friendliest matchups to quarterbacks, and second to wide receivers. So this could have been a pretty good game for Jacksonville passing attack, but unfortunately they couldn't get anything going. Trevor Lawrence only has 9 touchdown passes on the season. Uh, and we played 13 weeks, so that's pretty bad. In case you hadn't figured that out, that's pretty bad. So he only has 1 game this entire season with multiple touchdown passes. So Urban and that staff, they have to go. They have to kind of go back at it this offseason. Hopefully they don't retain Urban Meyer. I think the owner said that they're hinting towards keeping him in 2022, which would be a huge mistake. And we don't want to see one of the most generational prospects we've seen that's come into the league get ruined this early in his career. So Trevor Lawrence, fantasy LVP of the week.
I mean, the only thing that's really saved him from getting destroyed in the media is the fact that Urban Meyer's been worse than his play. So
yeah, absolutely.
Blessings for that. All right, now to our favorite segment of the show, Cap and No Cap. For the first time listeners that don't know what cap means, cap is when is another word for is a slang term for lying. So if I was to say, "Oh, Zach Wilson is an MVP candidate," I would say
that is such cap. Because that shit was cap. Don't ever use such an outlandish example like that.
You gotta make it simple. You gotta make it simple for the people to understand.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so now to our first segment, first statement. I can trust Jalen Hurts in the playoffs, cap or no cap.
I think you can. I think that's no cap. We touched on this a couple of weeks ago, but he had the easiest remaining schedule left of any quarterbacks or any team, especially as it relates to the, passing games and quarterbacks. They still play a Washington football team twice, and they play the Giants. He was the QB1 overall before that Giants game that they lost 13-7. And then he hurt his ankle in that game. So he was still, he still gave you a very safe rushing floor, and he was giving you 20 plus fantasy points per game. So yeah, you can definitely trust Jalen Hurts in the playoffs. This is a pretty easy schedule for him. So yeah, this is no cap.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's one of them Konami code quarterbacks. So you getting at least 40 yards from a quarterback, that's an extra touchdown that you get for fantasy points. So definitely believe that's no cap. The second one, I am starting Lamar Jackson in the playoffs if he's available, cap or no cap.
I think you still have to. This is no cap. I'm starting him. I would start him. I have him in a league, a couple of playoff leagues, and I have to start him. If he's available, his ceiling is still so high on a week-to-week basis. It doesn't matter who he's playing against. I know he hasn't been playing well, throwing interceptions over the last several weeks, but it's still Lamar Jackson at the end of the day. His rushing floor is still really high. He still has weapons around him. Rashad Bateman's coming on strong. Mark Andrews, who we'll touch on here in a second, is a very strong target for him. And then Marquise Brown will have a couple of deep shots here and there. So I think you still have to play Lamar Jackson despite how poor he's been playing over the last several weeks. So this is no cap.
Oh man, I struggle with this one because he's been bad for almost a month now. It's one of those things like if for whatever reason you have like another quarterback on your roster, I would lean towards the other one until he can show you that he's like healthy. Because he needs his legs more than anything else, and it is an ankle injury. We don't know the extent of it. So I want to say cap, because let's say that he is able to go this week. He gets Green Bay. Green Bay has been pretty tough on quarterbacks. Well, they've been decent versus their opponents this last probably 4 to 6 weeks now.
Yeah,
because they're getting healthy.
They've been much improved as a defense. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Then they got Cincy. Cincinnati's, for whatever reason, they've kind of figured him out um, in terms of like throwing wise versus him like the last year, and then in the first game that they played this year, and then he has the Rams the last game. So I would be a little wary to start him if he's not fully healthy. So for me, I would say Cap. That's why I'm leaning towards. But I mean, some people might be under the law of starting your studs. Um, I would I would lean towards the other way where like if you have someone that's just been playing better, then I would start them over the stud because at this point you need production.
Yeah,
Names is
and two
always guaranteed production.
yeah, in two QB and super flex leagues, you definitely start Lamar
Oh yeah,
Jackson.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
One
yeah.
quarterback leagues, I mean, you can. For me personally, I'm still starting Lamar Jackson, but like Gene said, like if there's like a streamer that's been playing a lot better than Lamar Jackson, maybe consider him. But I'm still putting Lamar Jackson in that lineup regardless because of his weekly high potential and his weekly high ceiling.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, next one. Travis Kelce will not finish tight end one overall. He has, and then keep in mind that he's been tight end one every year since 2015. And currently, Andrews has a 13-point lead over him. Cap or no cap?
He will not finish as the tight end one overall. I'm gonna say it's no cap. I don't think he does. I think this is the first year that he gets his crown taken from him. Kelce, he's had back to back games of just having 3 catches for 27 yards.
Mm-hmm.
We believe that he can stamp out of this potentially, right? He has the Chargers coming up this week, division opponent. Anything can happen there. I think they get right against the Chargers, and then he has Pittsburgh and Cincinnati left. But like you said, Mark Andrews for the Ravens, he has a 13-point lead over him, and Mark Andrews is coming off of 11 catch, 115-yard touchdown game in Week 14. He has Green Bay this week, Cincinnati, and the LA Rams left. But I think the dark horse to take that tight end one crown this season is George Kittle. And the way that, like we touched on early on in the show, his weeklies, his ceiling is so much higher at tight end than any other tight end that you can compare him to.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other tight end in the league that can put up 11 catches, 150 yards, and a touchdown on a weekly basis like he's been doing the last couple of weeks. There's no tight end that can do that. 22 for 332 and 3 over the last 2 games. It's just remarkable. It's remarkable for anybody, but especially a tight end. He's 6'4", 250 pounds, and runs like a 4.4.
Yeah.
I think he had like a Spark X score of like 99 or something like that, or his speed score or his burst score was in the 100th percentile, which is absurd for a tight end. George Kittle, he trails Kelce by 28 PPR points. He may close that gap if he has another one of these blow up games, especially with his cake schedule down the stretch, ATL, Tennessee, and Houston. And so we'll see. But I think it'll come down to Andrews or George Kittle for that tight end one crown. I think
Yeah.
Kelce will still be really good down the stretch, but I think Kittle and Andrews will be ahead of him when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I believe this is also no cap because I mean for the most part, Kelce and Andrews they got middle of the road uh defenses in terms of defending the points allowed to the tight end position left.
Yeah.
Um, and and like we stated on previous episodes, it seems like that Kansas City offense has been at least defense have been able to manage their output against that they're able to put out versus them. So and I just feel like the opportunities for Andrews is higher than Kelce right now based on what we've seen. So I'll agree with you saying no cap. In the last one, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. They're both trustworthy starters in the playoffs. Cap or no cap?
This is no cap. I think on a weekly basis you can start both of them. If you have one or if you have the other, if you have one on on separate teams, you can definitely have confidence starting them. I think Green Bay now they're leaning more towards running a lot. AJ Dillon's getting a lot more carries, and that coaching staff
Yeah.
is starting to trust him a little bit more. Aaron Jones is still the starter by I guess by a title, but in terms of the playing time, I think it's kind of shifted a little bit in the favor of AJ Dillon. I think it could be a combination of a couple of things. Aaron Jones may not be 100% from coming back from that MCL sprain, because MCL sprains are supposed to keep people out multiple weeks. He only
Yeah.
missed one game, and he had the bye week to kind of get right a little bit as well. But I think there's still some lingering effects there. So I think they're just trying to manage his reps right now at the moment in time. This past game, AJ Dillon had 15 carries to Aaron Jones's 5, but Aaron Jones had
Yeah.
3 catches, so he had 8 total touches and scored 2 touchdowns. So I think Aaron Jones still being involved in the passing game still heightens his ceiling a little bit more over AJ Dillon. But AJ Dillon, in terms of getting the carries and potentially getting some goal line work, you can probably keep both of these guys in the RB2 mix, maybe with some RB1 upside. I think Aaron Jones' ceiling is still going to be a little bit higher, but you can definitely trust both of them in the playoffs as starters.
Yeah, I believe this is no cap because, like you said before, Aaron Jones' ceiling is a little bit higher because he has the reception threat on his side, even though AJ Dillon can catch also. But it looks like right now they rather just use AJ primarily as the primary rush because he's bigger, and when it gets colder, people don't want to tackle big people. So it keeps Aaron Jones a little more fresh for when he gets out, when they got him running routes that he can beat the linebacker that's on him.
Yeah.
So I trust both of them. AJ Dillon is probably going to be a little more touchdown dependent, but I would trust starting both of them. So no cap.
Yeah, and just real quick, one more thing. So I mean, their stats on the season are pretty similar. AJ Dillon has 614 yards rushing, and Aaron Jones has 599. But Jones has the edge in touchdowns, 4-2. And
Yeah.
then the receiving yards, AJ Dillon has, I think, 268 and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones has like 320 plus receiving yards, and he has 5 touchdowns. So 9 touchdowns versus 4. That's another thing. Aaron Jones has over more catches and then more touchdowns, but you could still firmly place these two guys at least in the RB2 mix at the very worst.
Yeah. All right. Now on to waiver wire pickups. We can touch on some players that think that could possibly help you if you need a spot start for your first week in the playoffs. I'll start off with the quarterbacks. The first one is Jimmy G. Jimmy G has been these last few weeks. He's been playing look pretty good actually. Obviously with the help with George Kittle going berserk.
Nuclear, yeah.
Yeah. This week he gets Atlanta. Atlanta gives up the most fantasy points to the quarterback position. So I would start Jimmy G with confidence if you need him. Another one is Tua. Like we said, our rule is fade the Jets. He plays the Jets this week off a bye. Just in the last time he played him, he went 273 and 2 touchdowns. So a few weeks ago. So I mean, I would start him with confidence if you need. I'll start. And the last one, I would at least pick this person up. You might not need to start him. Is Tyler Huntley. If you saw the game in the spot start once Lamar got hurt, he actually looked pretty good. He led them back.
You brought
They
him
were
back,
down 24. Yeah, they were 24-0, and he brought them back like pretty close to getting that game into overtime. But he just didn't have enough. But I thought overall he looked good throwing the ball, targeted Bateman a lot, targeted Andrews a lot. So could be somebody you could spot start if Lamar's not if Lamar's not out.
Yeah. Just real quick on running backs. We touched on Austin Eckler getting hurt, but if he is gonna miss the game, I would look to pick up Justin Jackson or Joshua Kelly. Those are his direct backups. If you're gonna prioritize these guys, prioritize Justin Jackson over Joshua Kelly, Joshua Kelly did get 10 carries to Justin Jackson's 9, but Justin Jackson was actually in the game earlier than Joshua Kelly. Joshua Kelly was only in the game because it was a blowout and Eckler was hurt. So I would prioritize Jackson over Kelly.
And Jackson will get the primary receiving work.
Yeah, he'd get the he'd be the candidate to get the receiving work. So, and they're 4.5 point underdogs at home versus the Chiefs on Thursday. So they, Justin Herbert will definitely be airing it out, and Justin Jackson could be could be a good beneficiary of some of those dump offs. A couple of other running backs we want to touch on really quick. Rashad Penny, we touched on earlier in the show. He had a career day last week. He didn't see a target, but he's still, his playing time is ramping up each week. He would definitely be the number one player, the number one running back to pick up on waivers this week. And also to Ernest Johnson for the Browns. Kareem Hunt is most likely going to miss this game and maybe next week as well. He steps into the number 2 running back role, and as we've seen earlier this season, he did have a pretty good game on Thursday night against the Broncos, rushing for over 130 yards and I think a touchdown. So pick up to Ernest Johnson, and then we have Royce Freeman for the Texans. He did have a 16% target share and he had 17 touches, but just keep an eye on David Johnson coming back. And I think Rex Burkhead hurt his groin?
He got hurt in that game too.
Okay. Yeah, so just keep an eye on practice participation for those guys this week. But yeah, Royce Freeman should definitely be an ad as well.
All right, and then touching on wide receivers, I don't have any tight ends because there's really none at this point.
Yeah.
Rashad Bateman this past game with Tyler Huntley, he had 7 receptions for 103 yards, 19% target share. Just keep an eye on Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins did not play in that. He got hurt really early in that game, I believe.
What else is new?
Yeah. And most of this work was, after Lamar got hurt and them trying to come back from 24-0. So it's good to see. Hopefully they can continue this. So Bateman's available, pick him up at least. Another person, Gabriel Davis, wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. Sanders got hurt his knee early in that game, and it looks like he's week to week. So, at this point, you could almost cut bait with Sanders. I'm not sure what you would expect him. This is win or go home at this point. So, and he hasn't really done too much this year. Gabe Davis, every time he's done this, had to come in for somebody getting hurt. He's always looked pretty good. You always see him on the back of the end zone scoring a touchdown at least. And in this past game with the Buccaneers, he had an 83% snap share, 15% target share, and this is back-to-back games with at least with a touchdown. So another person you can look out for if he's on your waiver wire. Alan Lazard, this guy, he had 19% target share, 82% snap share, 6 for 71 and a touchdown. All those numbers were more than MVS. Last week, MVS, for the Packers. MVS numbers were better than Lazard's last week, but this week it flipped. We've been seeing Lazard playing a little more of the slot since Cobb has gone out with injury. So this could be also somebody else that could help you in at least I can't even think of the word now. A flex spot. A flex spot if you need somebody.
Be a decent flex option. Wide receiver 3 flex.
Yeah. And then the last one, if he's available, Amon-Ra St. Brown. The last 3 weeks he's been wide receiver 13, which is funny to think about since he plays for Detroit. But I think he has 22 catches over these last 3 weeks. I know Dan Campbell said that they wanted to throw more before they played Denver, which they didn't do. But
but when they're throwing, he's getting the catches.
Yeah, he's getting the targets for sure and getting the catches. Yeah. So definitely somebody you can add for a flex spot.
Yep.
And then our next segment, matchups to attack, aka barbecue chicken. If you don't know what barbecue chicken is Shaq coined this on Inside the NBA preview show on TNT. Whenever he sees sees a matchup that can be exploited, he would just say barbecue chicken alert
Yep.
You can eat all day over there, so just keep giving the person that ball, the rock, go feast. So
Yep.
um, the first one I got is Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, wide receivers for Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Titans secondary. The secondary gives up the second most points to wide receivers per game. Uh, as if you've been paying attention to Deontay Johnson, he's pretty much averaging at least 10 targets per game and doing a lot of work with those targets. So the Titans, they struggle to cover wide receivers. So these are two wide receivers you could look to use in DFS, or if you might have some roster questions for at least Claypool, you can at least look at their opponent and be like, okay, let me put this player over another. So
And Claypool had a pretty good game against the Vikings this past week. He had 8 for 93, and he had
yep,
a beautiful catch down the sideline. So, that this game is going to be pretty competitive. I think it should be. These two guys will definitely be feasting on the Titans secondary.
yeah. My second one is Jalen Hurts versus the Washington defense. This defense gives up the second most fantasy points to the quarterback position. Um, I mean, you didn't see it last week, but generally over the season, uh, you've been able to exploit this defense however you want to.
Yeah.
Even with them missing both their outside pass rushers, their corners are not good. So, and like we said at the towards earlier in the show, Jalen Hurts is a Konami code type quarterback, so he can beat you on the run or in the pass. So,
Yep.
you can start him with confidence versus Washington if he's healthy enough to play.
Yeah, and then the last one we have here is Tua versus the Jets. Again, fade the Jets. They are the third friendliest team to opposing quarterbacks. And the last game that Tua played against the Jets, he had 273 yards and 2 touchdowns. And now I think in this week he gets the Devontae Parker back healthy as well. So that's another weapon for Tua
Mm-hmm.
to go to. And Jalen Waddle's been coming on pretty strong. Who we'll touch on here in our last segment, but he's been coming on pretty strong. And I think that's another. And plus, Miami's entire running back room has COVID, so they're going to be probably forced to throw the ball a lot more than they're accustomed to. So
Yeah.
that's another
And
good
then
matchup.
they're also trying to make a playoff push, so this
Yeah.
is definitely incentive for them to come out and um, get the job done.
Yep.
Um, Last segment of the show is we like to touch on player props, since in the state of Texas we do not have a sports book. So how we
Yet.
get our fix.
Yet. So hopefully
Yeah,
soon.
you're right.
We
You're right.
smarten
Yeah,
up.
yeah, it's coming. Uh, how we get our fixes through player props using prize picks. Uh, we like to use these to, you can use these to make parlay off of with at least 2 lines. You can also use this as a gauge to see if a player that you kind of fringe on, if you want to start them or not. This gives
Mhm.
you a good gauge in terms of projections for what they're expecting for the player for that week.
Yep.
Uh, so we like to go through some of these and hopefully this can make you money. I know last week again we went two out of four. Um, Kelce, he didn't show up for us because they blew that team out before you even blinked the eye.
Yeah.
And Austin Eckler, I mean, they didn't really use him in the passing game.
He got hurt. I think he might have had a chance to get something, because I mean it was only, I think the line was like only 40,
It
40
was
and a half.
40, but they were
Yeah.
blowing him out.
Yeah. So maybe,
That's the other
I
thing that
guess
hurt.
we were kind of behind the 8 ball on that one. So
Yeah, but the KJ Osborne and DJ Moore hit for us.
yep.
So hopefully we have better luck this week. Let's see if we can go at least 3-1
I think like the
or
last
4
like
and
3
0.
or 4 weeks we've gone through 2-2. Like
Yeah,
we
I
just
know.
yeah. So yeah, hopefully this week is a lot better.
Yeah. All right. So my first one is Michael Pittman, wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts, under 61.5 receiving yards versus New England Patriots. New England, they've given up the fifth least amount of fantasy points to the wide receiver position, and then their pass DVOA is third in the league. So Bill Belichick, they like shutting down uh, your main threat in the air, or they focus on your main threat on the ground. So depending on how the your offense shakes. He could focus on one thing, but they have J.C. Jackson on their side, so they can just focus on trying to stop the run. So I think New England will focus their best corner on Pittman, and he won't reach over the 61.5 mark.
Yep.
My second one is the Thursday night CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, to rush over 47.5 rush yards versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are last in rush DVOA, and they give up the second most running points to the running back position. Kansas City, not Kansas City. The Chargers allow you. I mean, if you want to run on them, they'll let you run. They're definitely a pass funnel team. So
Don't let the last 2 weeks fool you, because they haven't had large rushing totals against, but they're still a bad run defense, and I think
yeah,
they get exploited.
yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of that, on that same note, the last couple of props that we have, the first one is Patrick Mahomes over 15.5 rushing yards versus the Chargers. As we mentioned, he hasn't been running a lot as of late, but there is still a lot of value here. The last meeting that they had in Kansas City earlier in the season, Mahomes went 4 for 45, and the Chargers have given up 10 for 62 yards to Jalen Hurts and 8 for 51 to Lamar Jackson. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's eclipsed 15.5 yards 7 times this season. So I think there's still a little value in this number, and it's pretty low compared to what he's done over the last several weeks. So I think we can exploit that this Thursday. And then finally, we have Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins over 69.5 yards receiving versus the Jets. Fade the Jets. We're going to say it again. We're going to keep saying it. We're going to keep screaming it from the mountaintops. He's eclipsed 69.5 yards in 5 out of the last 8 games. And then the Jets, they've allowed at least one pass catcher to go over that number in 9 of 13 games this season. On top of that, they're 32nd in pass DVOA. So this Miami versus the Jets matchup is a good one, and Jalen Waddle and Tua should take advantage given all the running backs out due to COVID.
No, we at the end of the show. Another good one in the books. Hopefully, you be able to take some information and apply it to your grind and to your race to the fantasy championships.
Yeah.
I know for me, it sucks because the home league that we're in, that I wasn't able to make it, but I got a bunch of other leagues I'm in, and I'm should be able to apply to what was going on.
Other league talk.
Oh man, yeah, other league talk. To to get me some fantasy championships, man. You got anything else before we get up out of here?
No, just good luck to everybody that made it this far to the playoffs. I know it's been a long grind, it's been a long season, a lot of ups and downs, but hopefully, you made it here, and then you're in position to make a run at a championship. Just remember, over the last couple of weeks, been telling you, get productive people in there, get productive players in there. Don't be beholden to start big name guys if they're not producing, if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing on a weekly basis. Get somebody in there that has been producing. So that's kind of like the best piece of advice I can give you guys. This weekend and weeks ahead, leading into the fantasy championships. And again, just follow us on Twitter. Follow me at just_Ico9. Follow Gene at Fantasy Genes, GENES, and then follow the show at Off the Line FF.
Yeah, like the content, please hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. Hit the thumbs up, share it with your friends. Comment where you can. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Off the Line Fantasy Football, and then you'll see our pretty faces with some videos. You can also find us on all streaming platforms like Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, others. Just search under Destination Devy. Like we said before, you want to turn that roster with players that are producing. If you got players that are hurt, that might be out for like they're week to week at this point, you don't have week to week to spare. So release them, go get somebody that's healthy and doing some work. Again, be safe, have fun, go win week 1 of the playoffs. Until then, y'all enjoy the week of football, and be safe.
Peace out.